Did it. I did
Hey,
it.
brother.
What's up, man?
Oh man, not you looking at it. How you doing?
I'm good. Do you have Harry Dean Stanton on your shirt?
I do. Yeah, yeah. This is There's no self.
Genius. That from Paris, Texas. Is that shot from Paris, Texas?
So good. Yeah. This is the dude from the Waterliers that made this.
Oh.
Obviously didn't come through, so I was like, yeah, I'll buy one. I'll buy 5 of those, and just that'll be my shirt for the week.
Are you aware of my wife and I and our Harry Dean Stanton connection? Have I ever told you that story?
Please do tell.
So the first time I ever saw Amanda, it was at Austin City Limits Festival, and she was playing with Billy Joe Shaver, and she was like 20 or 21 or something. She was drinking. It was middle of the day, and she had some enchiladas that she had just gotten backstage, and she handed them to Harry Dean Stanton, who was standing backstage during the set with Luke and Owen Wilson's uncle. And it was this has been like almost 20 years ago, a long time ago. And it was Luke Wilson's 30th birthday, so that's how long it's been. I guess, I don't know, 13, 14 years. And Amanda goes on stage with Billy Joe Shaver, and she starts to perform, and I see her on stage, and that's the first time I ever saw her. And I was like, oh, man, I need to go back and tell her that she did a great job, see if I can meet Billy Joe Shaver. So I went backstage, and I walked right up on Harry Dean Stanton, and he was eating a plate of enchiladas, like as fast as he could possibly go. And I didn't know at that time that they were Amanda's enchiladas. She had just handed them to him and said, hold these and don't eat them while I go on stage and play. And then he went on after that and sang this Mexican happy birthday song that he sings in Spanish to people. It was so beautiful. But she and I never met that day. We met like a year later. I just saw her that day, and then when I saw her again in Athens, I was like, I think that's that same girl that I wound up meeting Harry Dean Stanton when I was trying to meet her.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What a confluence of strange characters.
Yeah, it was weird.
Was Billy Joe sipping on a Red Bull?
I'm sure he was. Yeah, I'm sure he was.
He loves his Red Bulls. Yeah, I've done a couple.
Yeah.
He could be sponsored by them.
It's always the people who their personality is like the worst for Red Bulls or cocaine. Those are the people who like it the most. Billy Joe Shaver has shot somebody. He doesn't need to be drinking Red Bull.
Yeah, he needs to be drinking some of that. What's the slow your roll stuff that they sell here in Memphis?
Yeah. What is that? They used to sell those. Well, they didn't sell it, but everybody would make scissor over there when I was there. That was the big drink, and they made it with Jungle Juice, which was like the brand name. And I remember seeing the brand name of Jungle Juice, and everybody in Memphis was drinking Jungle Juice, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is horrible. This is a horrible thing to call a flavored purple beverage, but nobody understood me, so I stopped saying that because I thought
Hawaiian Punch just sounded, too foreign.
How are you?
I'm all right. We're holding up. How y'all doing? I've been watching the foreign stuff. I've been enjoying that.
That was fun. Yeah, we did a bunch. Amanda did like 30 of those in a row, and I joined her for quite a few of them. And yeah, it was fun. It was kind of like she was in the middle of a tour. Like had none of this happened, I would have been leaving next week to go on tour. So, I've rescheduled like 3 shows so far. But she had to just stop her whole tour right in the middle and come home because she was headed into California right when Newsom shut her down. And so she just got home and was like, I'm not supposed to be home. I've got to do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you get out there and you get, like me, I'll get out there and I'm still on dad hours. And so I, blow it out and then I wake up in the hotel at 6. And I'm not
in pain. Yeah. And her, her too. You've known her longer than I have. So you know that like she can't just switch from one mindset to the other, very, very quickly. So it's like she had to it was sort of an airlock for her. It's like, I'm going to go work in the barn for a month, and then I will feel comfortable to return to being a person who's not on tour right now.
I mean, it's different, man. It's a whole different mindset. Yeah, man, I'm just going to jump right in. I do these zero game plan.
Good.
Zero preparation. but I just usually talk about a few things that pop into my head and ask some people's questions. I know you've been doing a lot of really cool interviews, the Times and things like that are we talk songwriting. And,
Thank God.
Yeah. But it's that thing, there's that line, and we probably talk about it, but that, where it becomes the connection with people versus TMZ up in your shit.
Yeah.
So I'll just jump into song questions. There's a thing you do with your songs that I always really respect, and that it's you cover your tracks a lot with the writing. There's a balance going on with a lot of songs. One popped into my head was Speed Trap Town, something like that. In that your character songs, they are there's a dramatic element to them in that it's set in the crisis point. To me, that song wouldn't work if it was just somebody looking back at a relationship that wasn't great with the old man or something like that. If they were just listing details, but you start in the crisis point at the deathbed, and by the end of the song, there is the change that he's going through. And so doing that with having the nuanced detail of a thing, the Indian mound in there, that right resonant detail, and then being able to zoom out and zoom in like that. Is that I guess the question is, do you start sometimes with the framework of the arc of the character, the drama, or do the details like that Indian mound, which always sticks in my head, do those come later?
Most of the time, when it works, it's kind of like I'm dropping in on something. So I knew, like I remember writing the first line first, which isn't always the case. As you know, sometimes you have to go back and build. Like Traveling Alone, I wrote, obviously, the chorus first, sitting in an airport waiting on a flight. And, for this one, it's like I started that from scratch. So I wrote the first line, and I was like, okay, that's a really good first line. It's a very good, like, Southern lady, like, she's saying that this is none of my business, but I'm going to make it my business in a very bless your heart sort of way, And then I thought, well, okay, so who's around her? Who is she talking to? And he has to be a little bit of me. But then also I started remembering this when I was a kid. My cousin, or my dad's cousin, who we hung out with a lot. My dad's kind of an isolator, so he didn't have a lot of buddies when I was a kid, but he hung out with his cousin, even though I don't necessarily know he enjoyed the time he spent with his cousin, because his cousin was just kind of, like one of those annoying sort of like prepper type of guys who stocked his pantry and thought that there was another war coming, and all these kind of like crazy sort of, Southern. I mean, he's probably protesting the fact that we're all having to stay in the house right now. He's that type of dude. Yeah. Now you're out in the road with a fucking machine gun bitching about it. It's like, you have been planning for this your whole life, dude. Sit in the house and eat your beans. Tell your ex-wife, who's crying now. I got all these beans. No, anyway, look at all this toilet paper. I've got reusable toilet paper. It was one of those guys. But at one point, his wife left him for the chief of police, and I got like one side. So this song is not about that, but the song is framed with this character that was based on one side of that story. And the side that I got, which I didn't necessarily believe, I was a 12-year-old kid, and my family was like, "Oh yeah, your cousin's wife left him for the chief of police." And, the chief of police had a family and all this kind of stuff. And so I was like, man, the character stuck with me. So when I started writing that song, I was like, okay, what's this guy like, And then relationships that, on a more personal, once you start getting a character, then the details happen from real true shit. Like there was an Indian mound close to where I grew up where people would go and just sit, That was kind of the place where I remember my dad telling me about pulling over on his way to work one morning and just sitting there in the car. He didn't tell me this till I was, at the tool and die shop, and I just pulled my truck over in this field next to the Indian mound, and I just sat there, and I thought, do I want to keep doing this, or should I just keep driving? I go off a cliff or wind up somewhere else. And at the time he's like 22 or 23, and I'm like 4. So here we are. But that always stuck with me, like that, just sitting there at that spot trying to figure out, what's next. Like, I'm not in control of my life right now. I'm just going to sit in this place where there's a bunch of dead bodies, and it makes me feel insignificant, and I take comfort in that. It's like standing next to an Indian mound is like standing next to the ocean. It's like, man, it just reminds you of how meaningless your whole existence is. But it also has this kind of reassuring thing of each person that's under that pile of dirt had their own serious shit going on, even if they were, Native Americans who lived 150 years ago, and they're still under this pile of dirt. And here I stand drinking a cup of coffee next to it, and it's kind of a perspective thing, for the character.
Yeah, and that one always, and those kind of details, and there's so many in that song. Whether they register right up front with people when they're listening to it, I think there's a cumulative effect of that. I mean, because you hear in that he's made the decision, and that's it's a burial mound. That's a past. And it's also a past that was taken from some people. All those connotations are in there floating around, but and you have that in your songs. But then you don't shy away from the simplicity in the choruses sometimes of saying, "Come along here. This is you say it in the chorus there. I mean, you're like if there's anything I can't be left behind, and not just say it. You reinforce it musically, and you pause on the side and the side, the side. It's there, and so that zooming out doesn't work, I don't think, without the detail work, and that's the balance that I always appreciate. And
yeah,
I don't know if you ever struggle with, this is too zoomed in, I need to.
Oh, right. Yeah, sometimes I do, definitely. Something when I get to the end of a song, sometimes I'll look back and go, maybe this should have been a poem. Because I'm not giving one or two little things, like certain words, and then they've got the story, and you don't have to add, and they fit in the puzzles of the phrasing pretty nicely. But
and music can be a clue. Your music is very. Unless some people will make their music ironic. They'll set the music ironically against what they're saying. But a lot of times, your music is very cinematic and evocative of the emotion. It's like it's a clue a lot of times.
It is a clue. Yeah, it's definitely a clue. And I have kind of argued with that in my own head some, because there is a traditionalism to that. When the music goes in the same direction, it's impossible to avoid doing things that have been done before. So it gives it to me kind of sometimes it gets to the edge of being kind of cheesy, for lack of a better word. And when I get there, I look at it and I think, well, is the honesty of the system worth it? And more often than not, it is. It's like I could make something that was fresher and hipper sounding, production wise and arrangement wise, but it would not be as honest, and it wouldn't be how I felt. You know, I don't feel like that, so I'm not gonna sing like that. Yeah, and that would just be irony. And for me, it's like irony should just serve the purpose of truth, you know, in a Randy Newman way or a Nelson way. And if you're not doing that, then you're just hiding. And it's cute to hide. A lot of good musicians have made a career from, you know, trying their best to keep from letting anybody find out anything about what was really going on with them. But I get bored. You know, I get bored with that. I like to know.
Yeah, that actually, but it's funny to mention that too. That it's I don't because we do we both work melodically linear. You know, there's not and sort of like you know, anyone from Guy Clark to, you know, all these songs, they're not doing Bacharach skips, you know, but it always strikes me in with your songs, you seem to have a bottomless sort of well of new takes on melodies. You have a really like this. Some of these melodies don't seem. You have such a. I don't know. I was wondering how much of you being a shit hot guitar player, you know, if that lends itself to the melody variety.
It's all that. Yeah, it's all that, and I'm not just tacitly agreeing with your shit hotness, but for the sake of time, I will say that like it, because I played guitar for so long before I started writing lyrics. It like, and it was probably 6 or 7 years before I really started doing it at all. I just played the guitar, and I played lead guitar. So like at first I didn't learn a lot of rhythm parts. You know, I knew basic chords, but I just wanted to rip. You know, so like I was listening to like the first 2 Def Leppard records, the pre-Mutt Def Leppard records, like On Through the Night and High and Dry. Yeah. And I was listening to Zeppelin 4 because my dad had that album. And I was listening to Free. Dad had Fire and Water. And like I was just learning solos and all these Skynyrd songs that my uncle would show me because he played in a Southern rock cover band. So I was learning solos for years. And so when it came time to start writing songs, I sort of approached it with that same, you know, just naturally. I was like, yeah, okay, if I just start soloing with my mouth and make some words that fit my mouth solo, it's gonna rock, you know. And I still kind of do that. I'm still kind of mouth soloing when I'm writing a melody for a song, which can get like, sometimes I have a hard time determining how important the melody is in a song to me. But when it comes down to like the basic element of, do I like this? A lot of the music I like doesn't have much of a melody at all, you know. So I don't know if that's just incidental or if it's something that I'm actually attempting to throw in. I think it's more just the way that I express myself, because I was so used to, you know, feeling through a solo from 7 or 8 years old that happens when I'm singing too.
Yeah, I could hear that. Yeah, and it just I'm always just amazed that in that form, in a linear form, that there's always like, I was like, oh, I never thought that, because I hear I don't know how you hear music, but I'm always hearing it like I wrote it. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have done that change, you know, or that melodic. You know? Yeah. So it just, I don't know. There's always really interesting melodies to me in a linear form, which is difficult, I think.
I switch everything out, you know, like, I don't know if you do this or not, but when I'm writing a melody, the chord changes underneath it. I'll do all the substitutions.
Oh yeah,
a lot, just to see if one of them works better, you know. And most of the time, the first one that you fall on naturally is the best. But sometimes, you know, you need like a 6 instead of a 2, or a you know, a minor instead of a major, you know, 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm always going through the Ken chords. You know, if it's a C, I'll pop out the E minor and the A minor because they share 2 notes. You know, that's where I'm always just going like, what if? Now, what I don't do is a lot of the extensions, like, you know, those to me are beautiful, but you know, maybe I'll put one in the other.
You gotta know know exactly. For me, you have to know exactly where to go with those. I'm not, theoretically sound enough to write those kind of songs. It's like if I listen to Rufus Wainwright, I'm like, he's playing something dangerous right now, but he knows where to go next.
Yeah, you trust him. Like,
yeah,
okay, we're gonna get there when he's
yeah, he's not gonna leave you hanging, on a leading tone that resolves to a 4 or some shit. He's not gonna do it, and it sounds good. It sounds like, oh, I can do this, but you can't do it because you get like a cat with half its whiskers cut off, and you're listening to that stuff.
I love it. Something else I was going to ask. Let's see. Do you? I mean, because I find when I do this, as a guitar player, my hands will want to do the same thing. So I will want to go to the same thing. I write away from the guitar sometimes.
Yeah, I do that. Mostly just out of like not having the convenience of having the guitar with me, though. Like I write a lot when I'm driving. I wind up singing into my phone a whole lot, and really a lot of the best songs that I have written have happened that way. I'll just have to pull over and sing into my phone. And used to, I'm sure you probably did something like this, but I would borrow somebody else's phone in the van and call myself and not answer it and leave it on my own voicemail. And that's how I would save notes when we were touring back in the day. I was like, let me see your phone. Let me see your phone, Brad. I'd call and sing into Brad's phone on my own voicemail.
John Snodgrass does a sort of thing, except for he won't save them on his own phone. He'll fucking call me. Because he knows my phone. He'd be like, hey, that thing I sang into your phone when I was high as a kite last Wednesday, can you send that to me?
Can you find that, please? Oh, that's awesome. That's
I'm going to file away, John.
That's so funny.
Again, there's certain songs that I'm always curious about, and it tends to be. Now, this will lead me to another question in a minute, but some of these cinematic things, I'm just like, where the fuck did it come from? Children, like the lines, the zoom in on the detail, and then the zoom out, that couldn't happen without one or the other on the lines. I was riding my mother's hip; she was shorter than the corn. That zoom in, and then all of a sudden, all the years I took from her just by being born. If you'd said one of the other without the other, without that balance, it would have been grandiose to go right into all the years I took. Like, just in general, I was curious about a song like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's like probably one of those things that I never. It just felt right when it feels right when it gets there. When you're like, okay, I have something very specific to anchor on. I can say something that otherwise would be too vague or too broad. It's kind of like just mixing a cocktail after you've drank the same one for 10 years. You don't have to measure it, anymore. You're just like, I know how much, soda water to put in details because I was trying so hard not to be vague. So in like the songs that I wrote before anybody heard them are just like very, very specific. And I go back and see them now and I'm like, oh yeah, nobody would have any idea what the fuck I'm talking about here because it's just like very small pictures around a room, and there's nothing like those truisms, that takes, for me, that took a lot of practice. And the thing that I had to practice was knowing when to trust my instincts on those. Like a line like the second half of that verse, all the things I took from her just by being born, that's very close to being very stupid. You know what I mean? It's like, but it has to be because it's like the closer you get to something that's really a fucking killer line, the closer you get to nonsense in my mind. It's like, because usually they're not things that are absolutely true.
Yeah.
But you have to have this, like, there has to be some reason why the listener would go, that feels true. I know that it's not, but more importantly than that, it feels like the whole truth in one line. It's like, in Elephant, the no one dies with dignity line. That's been very, like, controversial as far as my audience goes, because a lot of people say, well, yes, they do. My mom did. How dare you
Yeah.
say that exists out of context? And like, I'm not going to look at them and say, no, you're wrong, and I'm not going to explain what I meant. But what I meant was, it's relative. Like, the idea of dignity is relative. So if you say that someone died with dignity, what's the inverse of that? That someone didn't?
Yeah.
And where's the line? And, the only way to keep from judging how someone dies is to say that we all die well, or we all die poorly. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's not, it's there. You can prove me wrong in any of these lines. You can totally prove me wrong, but it has to feel true on a level. And to get to that, you've got to really risk saying something just stupid as hell.
I can see that. Yeah. The overreach. Yeah.
Yes, the overreach. It's so easy to just like go right across the edge and say, something that's everybody's like, wow, that is the stupidest song I've ever heard.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. People want to get in and sort of chop it apart. And to me, these things, they stand completely in their own world, or they don't stand. But that's me. That's just
right. Yeah, me too. And I get so mad when people like. Well, I don't really get mad, but it irks me a little bit when people are like reviewing a record, or they're talking about a record, and they try in a very brief column to do it in the context of the other work. And it's like, if you're going to do that, that needs to be your goal. You need to do something that's like, let's talk about 7 albums here, and you're going to write something that's going to bore everybody to tears, and nobody's going to care about it. But don't come up and say like, this album would be great if the last album wasn't this. It's like, no, we are working now. We're making something now. It's like, you don't go up to an architect and say, man, I love my house, but the one you got built for the guy last year is just way cooler. Larry David.
The internet.
Mm-hmm.
Let's people do that sometimes.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask too about place as it relates to your music. We both come from places with deep but troubled musical heritages, and reconciling some of that, but also some of your stuff, it just reeks of muscle shoals or something that's in this homage way, but also is just innate. And I wonder if that ever, because I feel sometimes, when I'm in a thing and I'm like, oh, I can't have slap back here, I'm from Memphis, like, hey, slap back. I wonder if you ever have those sort of disconnects or
yeah, I have rules like that for sure. And it has more to do with like, I'm sure, I know you're aware of this. We've talked about this stuff before, and you're a plenty smart enough guy to, I can hear it in your music. You have to, like, I think, let the natural part, the part that's unavoidable, it's going to happen, because you come from a place that's like some of the best work anybody ever did, period. Like some of the best art anybody ever made, period, ever, anywhere, comes out of Memphis. And then some of it came out of Muscle Shoals. I mean, if you listen to I'd Rather Go Blind, I mean, that's the fucking Mona Lisa. That's as good as the fucking Mona Lisa. And they affect me in the same. To make rules in order to be respectful. There's just certain things I can't do. Now, when I'm home, I'm sitting upstairs with the Kemper, my headphones on, I'm playing the blues, man. But I am not selling the blues to anybody, and it's very important to me to not sell something that's not mine. And,
it's like, I just don't touch it. It's like, awful. Some of it's awful. But then you show, I mean, some of that stuff, you're so good at some of that. Like, that No Choice in the Matter, man, that song sounds like,
Yeah, well, it was fun. It was fun, and it was an exercise because I wanted to try to write that kind of song. And then I got the Muscle Shoals horns.
You did it.
I wanted to do that, but more for a selfish thing, because I wanted to, like, I wanted to hear that. I wanted to make something that sounded like that. And like I remember sitting in the studio while the horns were playing, and just like, you know, just the way you feel when you're hearing a really great horn section play on your own record. And I mean, you know, Harvey Thompson played the sax on that record, and Harvey played with Little Richard, and he played with Lyle Lovett's Large Band for a long time. And so Harvey, I asked him about, he was on, what was that show that used to happen in Nashville that was like a dance, like in the late 60s. It was a television show where like R&B players would play, and it was kind of like a American Bandstand or something, but it was out in Nashville. Harvey, so one night Freddie King comes through town, and Harvey's like the local sax player in Texas where he was living, and he got the pickup gig, and Harvey was 19 or 20 years old, and he was in college at the time, and he had an exam the day after the Freddie King gig, and Freddie King loved his playing, and was like, you know, will you come with me and play on this TV show tomorrow night, and, you know, I'll pay you. Yeah, and he said, well, I will, but I've got an exam the next morning, and I don't know that I should miss that exam. And Freddie King's like, you know, I'll make it worth your while. And so Harvey goes and plays, and there's footage online. If you look up Freddie King playing, you know, there's a bunch of people dancing. Was it Midnight Special?
Andrew Radcliffe just flew by and said
it may have been. I think it was before Midnight Special though.
Oh,
okay. I think it was like black and white footage. It wasn't Hee Haw, but it had a name like that. Like what is the? Anyway, it'll come to me as soon as we hang up. But Harvey went, and he played the gig, and he missed his exam, and he lost his deferment, and he went to Vietnam because he played that gig. And he said, yeah. And he said, when he got there, he got off the plane, and he said, I didn't have a horn. And he said, I found a bamboo pole, and I cut holes out of the bamboo pole. And I practiced on that just to keep my chops up. And then he said, one night in Saigon, me playing, and said, we need to get you a horn so you can, you know, do that around the bass. And so she got him a saxophone, which was like, I think she got him a alto, and he normally played tenor, but he said it was enough to keep us. Yeah, I think it was the Hayride. I think you're right. I think it was the Hayride. But you know, got him a sax so he could play, and he survived it. Came back home and had a career as a saxophone player. But like, that's the guy that was sitting there playing the saxophone on that song, you know. So it was a really great experience for me recording that. But after that, I thought, I'm not going to do that again, because that's not mine. That's R&B music. It's not my music. I can still love it and not create it. So I learned something from that process, you know.
Yeah, there's a point where it does become vaudeville almost, you know.
Yeah, and there's no way to avoid it. There's no way to avoid it. If you're not qualified in certain ways to make that music, there's just no way to avoid it. And some people can sing it, like Eddie Hinton could sing. You know, if you hear Eddie on a record, you would not know he looked like he did. But you know, there's just it's just not for me as much. And I love it. I love R&B music more than anything else. That's what I'll listen to. You know, that Albert King record in Memphis, the Born Under a Bad Sign, which is a R&B record of blues songs. I think that's like one of the best records ever made. One of the 3 or 4 probably best albums ever made.
Yeah, like the best guitar tone ever.
Oh, it was the best.
Right in your face. Like,
well, and he played left-handed and flipped the guitar over. I think it's much easier to pull down on a bend than it is to push up. So when you hear him bend that E string, it gets there quicker because he's pulling it down, and it's just like so much cooler.
Yeah, I've heard Joel Grandpa and stuff talking about that.
Yeah, Doyle does it the same.
The leverage and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
To jump off topic as hell, but I saw Andrew Radcliffe just float by earlier in Tweed. You know him, probably. He was wondering, to get in technical question, he was wondering a vocal mic you have caught into favor. He was curious if it was U67.
No, it is a little. It's a little ribbon mic, and it's like circular, like a hockey puck. That same mic it is, okay. And it's funny because that mic sounds good on me no matter what I'm doing. Like if I'm playing guitar, it sounds good. If I'm playing, it happens to be the best mic, and I think somehow the intensity levels change at the same way, whether I'm singing or playing or whatever I'm doing. It's all happening the same way in my head. So there's one mic that I use for about everything that I do in the studio. Even if I'm playing piano, it's the best mic. It's weird. It's really weird.
How much of your vocals go down live? Because there's like a live energy to when y'all are doing the rockers that feels like a live energy going on.
Yeah, a lot of it. Probably half of this record, and almost all of the previous three, were live takes. This record, we went back and did some things differently just because, I'll tell you one thing I'm really proud of, I didn't use a capo on this record, on any song, and I didn't really even tell anybody that. I was just like, let's see if I can write and record a whole album without a fucking capo, because I'm tired of being a singer-songwriter with a capo.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, you could. You totally could. And I did it, and then when I was in the studio, I had to go back and sing a couple things because you have to dance around the range pretty good if you're not moving up and down the neck of the guitar with a capo. So there are a couple songs I had to go back and sing, but a lot of it was live, probably half of it.
Cool. So yeah, a couple more softballs. We filled up about 40 minutes. I know you're busy as hell. I didn't mean for this to fall off. This is like the third time it's happened since I've been doing this where it's fallen on a record release.
It's fun, dude. It's fun. I appreciate it. I'm enjoying myself, so don't worry about that. It's
cool. Somebody asked because there was and I don't know how easy a comparison it was, but somebody said they heard a bit of Dire Straits influence on that like a bigger songs on the new record, and they were just wondering off chance just favorite Knopfler song.
Ooh,
hard one, I know.
That's tough. Yeah, I love Brothers in Arms so much. We covered that some at the Ryman the last time in October. But I went and saw Mark and met him right before we started making this record, and I'd heard that like he's probably not going to be very nice, just. And then I got there and he's like, "Oh, I've been listening to Southeastern all day." And it's like, oh shit. So then it was like full speed ahead on my Mark Knopfler influence for this album. And I finally got the Strat right. I've had this one Strat for a few years, and it's a 60, and it hadn't been played a whole lot. It was in really good shape. And Strats they take time. You got to get to know them. And it's like,
I borrowed yours for the last record because I had one in the studio that was not.
You have to move them a little bit and wait because they settle so much. And with all the springs and all the tension, you have to move the neck a little, move the truss rod a little bit and wait. Move the truss rod and wait. And we had to shim the neck. And then the secret appeared. Michael figured out to loosen up all the screws in the bridge other than the two on the outside.
Yeah.
So there's 6 screws on the front of an old-fashioned Strat style bridge. Just take them all out. And they're just sitting there. They're not actually screwed into anything. Just the 2 on the outside are the only ones that are actually screwed in. Sure enough, man.
Yeah. So let's tell me that again real slow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
see all those screws. See, you got 6 screws in there.
Yeah.
Just loosen up the 4 in the middle.
I'm gonna do that right after we get off.
I'm telling you, dude, it made it. And come to find out, man, I looked at some new Strats that they're making, and they just had the 2 screws. They didn't have the 6 anymore. I was like, they figured that out. Tell nobody. But yeah, it gets the action of the vibrato bar gets just right, and the slinkiness of the strings gets right, but you still kind of have to fight it a little bit. And I want to fight the Strat and Telly a little. Like a Les Paul, you should be able to just fly on, but a Strat and a Telly, you should have to disagree.
I like to wrestle with the Telly. The Strat I've got kind of low, but it's I mean, you know, the in between positions, the 2 and the 4 positions on those are just.
That's the spot. That's the spot.
Yeah.
And my Strat wasn't wired. It still had the old 3-way when I got it, so I was having to find that middle spot. You know,
a toothpick in there.
Mm-hmm. They put a toothpick or something to hold it there. But I finally just went ahead and had it wired to the 5 position. But the out of phase sounds a little bit different. There's a little bit more like low mid than that position on a new Strat because it's like intentionally wired with 5 ways. So I think the phasing is correct. It's just a combination of the 2 pickups.
Interesting. Do you ever do the flip on the magnets on sorry, we're in Guitar World. Thank y'all for coming.
Yes, this is fun. Now we're having fun.
Do you ever flip a magnet like the Peter Green thing?
Peter Green trick? I can't bring myself to do it, no. Because that was one of those accidents. I think I've read two different things. One thing was that he, and the one that I believe was that he saw Clapton play, and Clapton was using the bridge pickup all night. So Peter just took his neck pickup out. And then when he thought, man, I missed that, I need to put that back in, he accidentally put it with the magnet around, not flipped, but turned around the other way. So the polarity reversed. So if you flip it, you still got the same polarity, but he turned it around. And then he also screwed up and put the cover on backwards. So it looked, you can tell by looking at it, that it's that way. Yeah, I don't know. Did I ever tell you about the time I met Peter Green?
No.
So we were playing in Australia, and Peter Green, we were on this festival over there, Blues Fest, Byron Bay Blues Fest, and Peter Green had played, and I went and watched his set. He played great. He sat on a stool the whole time, and he didn't speak or sing. Like somebody else was there just to do all the talking and stuff for him. And then after his set, we were back in catering, and I saw him, and I was like, man, I gotta go see Peter. I gotta say hi to Peter Green. It's Peter Green, and so I walked up to him, and he was like looking at the pictures on the wall. They put pictures of people who've played at the festivals in the past. And he was just standing there looking at him, and I walked up. I said, Peter Green. I introduced myself and said, "This okay." And he looked at me and said, "I hope I did too." And it was not a lie, He just really.
He just lost in reverie.
He didn't know if he had played a show or enjoyed it or what. I was like, all right, man, that's all I needed. I'll see you.
That might be the sort of the theme. I need to put that on the wall about this show. I hope I did.
I hope I enjoyed that.
Man, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Cory.
Yeah, we've reached the promotion part of the show. Tell folks what you got coming up. Friday, there's a
new album.
The record everywhere.
It's a new album. It's called Reunions. That was just incidental. I didn't know we were all going to be separated when I named the album. Friday, it is out, available all over the place. Yeah, go get it. That's cool.
Yeah. You got any more? I got to check out the compliment thing. I love that dude.
Yeah.
I got to check that out.
I like Brian. And then there's I did a men in Blazers, which is normally a sports thing, like soccer guys, but it was really good because the host is like super excited, and his name is Raj, and he was like really stoked. That's a good podcast. And then I've been doing a bunch of press. New York Times, if you want to find out all the gritty, dirty details of a hillbilly marriage.
Yeah, that was intense.
It was tough.
And I thought y'all both did a great job. I thought the guy that wrote it did a great job. That was what I was sort of talking about earlier. Like that balance between somebody like Dylan gets to be impenetrable, but I think there's an expectation of when you're being honest with your songwriting.
And we always, we talk about these things like, is this worth doing? And most of the time, and in this situation, we both agreed that it was like, we don't want people to think that there's some kind of an ideal of perfection. You know, it's I think better for whoever reads that article to realize that it's just two normal people trying to compromise their way through the world, and it's not easy for any, even, you know, yeah, we get up in the pictures, we have to make it look easy. We get on stage, we're not going to fucking Fleetwood Mac it and start kicking each other in the shins in the middle of a song. But, you know, as everybody, not everybody has the same kind of issues with marriage and with kids and with, you know, addiction and with work and with all this stuff. Nobody's immune to that. They're working on a vaccine to it, but it's going to be another year.
Yeah. Any day now.
Yeah.
Let me know. I'll be in line.
Yeah, me too.
Next week, doing this. I've got Adam from Taking Back Sundays going to join us.
Sweet.
And I've got the next 3 months lined up. I wish we could not have time for this, but I have time.
We need to do another one of these where I interview you, because I feel super guilty, because it reminds me of us normally having a conversation, but I'm not asking you any questions. So next time we will do it on your Instagram Live, but I'm asking the question, because this feels so rude to me. It's like I haven't asked Cory anything.
No, that's why I enjoy this. That's why I try to keep it going like this. I was actually today. I woke up and I have these days. You know, I have these off days, and I woke up just thick. I woke up thick, and I'm like, I know we're gonna be relaxed. We know each other really well. I'm like, but for people out there that don't know, this is one of the most intelligent people I know. I mean, don't play Scrabble with this man. And so I would just like wipe the board.
Thank you,
but I was just like, oh God, I gotta wake up. But so this was really nice to chill.
We've had some good conversations when both of us were barely awake at all.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but we've had some good ones.
Clem sends his love. I asked.
I love that, Clem.
Yeah, I was like, do you want me to say hi to Jason? He's like, just tell him I miss him. I miss Mercy.
Oh man,
like the little man, but yeah.
We look forward to the book Dewey's Talk when Mercy was little, and it has become, dude, that book has become such a big part of it. I love it. That one and the John Clausen books are like,
yeah, those are great.
I just love. I saw Clausen sold it. Yes, he sold a painting for $1.25 million the other day. John Clausen is not here to fuck around, man. He's writing children's books, but he is selling paintings of like fucking donkeys and stuff for $1 million. John Clausen.